special meeting here, and that we have such a great turnout for the unveiling the draft Marquette Community Master Plan. So we're really excited to hear what our consultants have been up to, and there will be time for Q&A afterwards, but we'll hear about an hour presentation. Before I hand it over to our consultants, I'll pass it on to the staff, but thank you all for coming tonight and helping us shape the future of our community.
Thanks, Sarah. So, yeah, thank you all for coming. This process, we're at the point now with this meeting where this is really for the Planning Commission so that they can see the full draft. The plan is like, say it's a 95% done plan right now. There are some edits that will need to be made for land use and zoning part of it. We've worked through that. It's just that the final document needs to be updated. And so you are all invited here so that everybody who has a stake in this is on the same page. This is not going to be the last opportunity for public input or comment. We're looking at probably having a hearing on March 19th where the Planning Commission is going to say that this is a completed plan, and we're going to go forward with the public comment period starting probably the following day. And that's a 62-day comment period as mandated by the state law. And then there'll be a public open house sometime during that 63-day period, probably in April. And also, before you leave, we have some comment forms over there and a bunch of pencils. If you want to make any written comments here, you can do that. Or you can wait and do them online if you prefer to do that later. But we're certainly open to seeing some comments after this meeting. And without further ado, Russ Sawyering from Beckett and Rader.
Thank you very much. I'm really proud to be working on this plan. I'm a native of Marquette, and I've lived here to the late 70s and moved away, but we still have a family cabin in the southern part of Marquette County, so I get back here all the time. I have to say that I'm really falling back in love with Marquette, studying it for all the different aspects of the community, and the people are so wonderful and great. So what an interactive community it is. I live right now in Traverse City, and it's a quite an engaged community, but quite by far, Marquette seems to be even more engaged. They really care about the community. So it's a real treat as a planner to be working for such a great community. I'm going to start my timer because I promised 1 hour, no more. So here we are. Marquette is a draft plan, as Dave mentioned. It's not fully complete, but it's nearly complete. We still want to get public input, and there may be modifications based on what we hear from the public, what we hear from the area jurisdictions of the townships will have a chance to weigh in, the county, etc. So we may see some additional changes, but we have to present something, and this is what we think we've heard from the community. If you want to give a comment, you can do as Dave said on the table in writing, but you can also do by going to marquettemasterplan.org. Will get you an opportunity to electronically put your comments about the plan, what you think might need to be changed or enhanced. So the community really spoke. They spoke loudly. We sent out a community survey. 4,000 people returned that survey, which was really phenomenal. We had an open house with nearly 500 people show up. Maybe some of you attended that open house or filled out that survey. We also had a redevelopment workshop a year ago this month. And then we had also listening sessions from various stakeholder groups from our community. So we heard quite a bit. This is what people said. They said that we really need to address affordable housing. This is an issue nationwide, but it faces Marquette as well. And it's becoming more and more difficult for people to live in this town that they love. So it's something that we have to really address. Daycare is also attainable. Affordable daycare is really hard, but it came up many times about public access to career, not only to visit it, but just to see it on a regular basis is critically important. Preserving the character of Marquette with the historic sandstone buildings, and I can go on to all the list, but it's all incorporated in the plan, but I just wanted to hit some of the highlights. So this is the proposed cover for the master plan of local arts. Maybe you've seen this drawing before, or this painting before that's been displayed at City Hall. And as Dave said, the planning commission is really the ones, they are really truly the authors of this plan. And they will decide if it's ready to go out or not, and then they'll send the city commission may exert their authority to decide if they want to be the, but well, the way it works is the planning commission eventually, after having a public hearing, will eventually send it to the city commission. City commission will say, we like it, or we don't like it, but they can't change it. It goes back to the city planning commission, and they're the ones who can make the modifications. So that's the kind of the process, how it goes. We have, there are 6 guiding principles that really are giving direction to the whole entire plan. So I'll go through those. One is to be good steward and to be steward and cherish our natural resources. To encourage quality housing and at all different price points, so we can afford to live here. There's quite a range of incomes in Marquette, and we want to make sure that this community is inclusive for all the residents of our community here. And preserve our entire history before the Europeans came. The Native American populations that were here for centuries before the Europeans came, we need to acknowledge that as well and preserve those. Encourage development and vibrancy in our, not only in our downtown, but on our commercial corridors as well. As we see great growth potential along some of the commercial corridors, and including in our downtown. And then make sure that we have transportation options that are reasonable, attractive, and inviting, besides being an automobile. And so there's it's really important because about 10% of the households in Marquette, 8 to 10%, do not have an automobile. So we need to address those people that do not have automobiles. And about 30% of the population do not have a driver's license. So we need to be caring about those people that do not drive, cannot drive. And then to maintain our neighborhoods is really made really clear to us, and also to connect the neighborhoods so they're not in isolation. They're connected to the rest of the community and to goods and services that people need. We have a background chapter that has a number of 10 different chapters, 170 some pages. It really gets into the details. It really was our opportunity, like if you're going to go for a physical, the doctor would check out your blood pressure, your blood profile, your weight, height, whatever, your mental acuity. And we were kind of doing the same thing with the city. And we were looking at various aspects, and those are the titles, and I'll go through those really quickly. Community profile is kind of interesting that Marquette is a young town. I don't know if you knew that, but it's about 10 years younger than the average city, the average age in Michigan. So you're a young town. It's interesting that young people are moving into town. That's a really healthy sign that you actually people are beginning their lives and beginning their careers, and they're thinking about this is someplace I'd like to live. Single male households have increased significantly in the last census, 46% increase. Now, NMU enrollment has been declining. I guess there was a little bump of increase this past year, but many of the smaller colleges around the nation have been losing student enrollment is declining. One of the things that is really apparent, and it came through in the survey very, very clearly, is that 47% of the households in Marquette are really struggling to afford to live here. Child costs are high, and homelessness persists, and that was very apparent in the survey results. Natural features we are really proud to have a lot of really beautiful features. I think that's what makes Marquette so attractive, is all the features we have, and we need to protect those. So there are some threats that are facing Marquette, and one of those is we're having a lot of changes in the weather for the unusual level. Driving today, and I hit 51 degrees a few times, and I was pulling to Marquette like 43. And last time I spoke, it was in September, I think, and it was nearly 100 degrees here. We've had some really strange weather since we've been working on this plan. I think we can expect more of that, more variation than we ever had before, more inconsistency, especially in the winter. The winters are warming faster than the summers up here. And I think that it's not going to be a sure deal that you can have winter festivals with snow in February anymore. It's going to be hit and miss sometimes. Some of the things we can do is we can look at what we're doing. I know locally, we can do some things that globally things are going to impact us no matter what we do. But locally we can do some things. And if you look at this one map that's on your left, the left side of the screen is showing the hot spots, the areas that are kind of this darker orangish red are the areas that are the hottest in the city. Those are clearly the downtown area, and then along West Washington Street. The campus also lights up pretty much too, and I think why this is happening is that this is an area that we have very few trees, and we have some pretty expansive, large parking lots. So those areas of the community are warming up faster than some other parts. The areas that are cooler are then a kind of a purple color. You see Presque Isle, which always seems to be cool. I remember as a kid, we would go to Presque Isle because we didn't have air conditioning on those hot days in Marquette. This would cool off like 20 to 30 degrees cooler up there. And it clearly shows up on this one particular day in August 2022 that it was quite a bit cooler at Presque Isle. Also along the Dead River, it's pretty heavily forested along here. We have the river running through it. That really helps with the trout population. And I think it's reflecting that there's a lot of trees in that area. South Marquette has a lot of beautiful forests, and that's showing that it's considerably cooler there as well. And some of the things that we need to be thinking about is how can we protect the water quality as well with all that asphalt. We have some, I think, overly wide streets in Marquette, and there's a lot of parking lots that are overly built and underutilized. I think there's opportunities to green up these areas with trees and landscaping, and also some depressions that can be like rain gardens that can capture some of the water instead of using debris infrastructure, which is simply putting a pipe and sending it out to the lake unfiltered. And so maintaining the water quality, but also helping to address the heat islands. Green infrastructure can help quite a bit. It does cost money to maintain a green infrastructure, but it also takes a lot of money to maintain green infrastructure. One thing we heard a lot about is, and I mentioned this earlier, is how important views of Lake Superior are. And that we are suggesting that there be some type of height analysis done when we're looking at zoning and building heights for the zoning code, that you're protecting some of those views, especially along those east-west streets. That when you're up like on South Marquette, you're 200 feet over the lake, and you're looking down those streets and seeing the lake, that you can see open views of Lake Superior. That alone will change how you feel during the day, but it also will bring value to the whole community. The more you can see of Lake Superior, the more valuable properties will be. And if you can go down the east-west street and see that view for a long time, you'll get the feeling in your head that it's a more expansive view. So it's really important to have that. And then there's some dialogue in the plan also as we're going along the coastlines to make sure that we have zoning incentives in place that can open up some of these views. And I know that there's been a lot of hurt when seeing some of the condominiums that were built. They blocked a long stretch of views, and we've been trying to be aware of that and trying to address that for future development to protect those views of Lake Superior. Let's look at the time here. Employing green infrastructure, I mentioned a little bit, is something that we can do. And so there's a chapter also on coastal resiliency. We are expecting with greater storms and frequency of stronger storms that there will be more flooding in parts of Marquette. And so this map is showing the areas that are more likely to get some flooding, areas along the Dead River and then along the coastline as well. Some of the tributaries that run through Marquette. The slide on the pictures on the right, maybe you've seen this before. This is from the watershed partnership, working with the city of Marquette. And Marquette has received a large grant to help restore some of the waterfront and to make it more resilient to the waves and storms that are likely to be hitting the Marquette at night. We were, I think the first time we came up, Dennis gave, Steckovitz, Community Development Director, gave us a tour, and we had huge waves on Lake Superior. I remember around Picnic Rocks, it was totally closed off because big boulders had blasted the wave action, blew into the parking lot. And I just forgot how violent and how great that is in a way, how violent Lake Superior can be. But we have to be aware that there may even be some taller waves in the future with stronger storms, so we need to be aware of that as we plan and design our coastline. And the hotel I'm staying at actually overlooks this old the Shutters power plant site, which is now vacant except for the substation there, but the possibility of a plaza in that area that would to be very accessible for a lot of people, especially people that may be handicapped to get down to the water's edge very easily. I think it'd be a great place for community celebrations in South part of Marquette. And I just really like this image. It's not our image, it's the image of one of the documents of a possibility of a concept for that area. And it certainly would be a great transformation of the Marquette waterfront in that area. We also talked about community facilities in chapter 5. And these are essential services about our police and fire, water and sewer, but also the cultural type of facilities, including and also important essential services such as daycare to make it affordable and attainable. And I just looked on the internet and saw that there's ads trying to get more people to fill those positions because we're really lacking the amount of there's more need, there's more demand than there is actually supply for children, so that puts a stress on young families. And then there's the cultural trail that I think is a fabulous example of a cultural facility that will really kind of celebrate the indigenous people and the early periods of Marquette, and also to provide some really great access to Lake Superior and good, healthy recreation. So I think this is with some really beautiful art that's being planned for this area. So I think this is really going to really make Marquette shine even further as that is developed. Chapter 6 gets into transportation and mobility, and one of the things that we had already mentioned before is that we want to make a transportation options for all different modes, besides the motor vehicle, also for bicycling, for walking, for using public transit. So those are really important for people, as I mentioned. Some people do not have driver's licenses, and they still need to get around. And I'm going to take a little short break here to have Dave just talk about the bicycle facility map. Just there's some changes. Do you have any special comments you want to say on that? Sarah says keep it short.
I'll point some things out here that are on the map that we developed for the plan. And this is, been working on this for 20-something years. A lot of community input's gone into the planning that we've done. And largely, this map was already adopted into our master plan in 2018. So a lot of these facilities shown on here have not been completed. A lot of the street markings, there's bike lanes that are still going to be done, and shared lane facilities. But one thing I want to point out that is going to be happening this year is an extension of the bike path around Tourist Park around the front of it and up onto County Road 550 on the north side of the road. Fortunately, we're able to do that because of our relationship with the Lundin Trucking and the funds that we get from them for corridor improvements on Wright Street and Sugar Road 550. We've got an illustrative path for the future, similarly down on Division Street. So we want to be able to create this path on the north side of Division. Obviously, that's a hot spot for biking, and Division Street's really very lacking and being a safe facility. But another illustrative thing that we are hoping to do is get funding, at least planning funding, to put a bridge over South Front Street to connect this neighborhood to the shoreline, because presently there's no safe place to cross the street there on a bike, and there's only one marked crossing within a quarter-mile section of the school, South Front Street Commercial Corridor. And another idea out there that we'll pursue funding for is a tunnel under the highway to connect the West Washington Street corridor node area to the other side of M553. But like I said, there's still a lot of facilities that we're working on that hopefully we'll see progress on in the next few years that have already been adopted into our plans. And so that's pretty much what I could cover there.
Thanks, Dave. These connections are really important, and they also help you get grants. So it's important to have a really good, well thought out, community embraced plan, because it will allow you to get some state funding and federal funding for these types of projects. So it's critically important. And then just making the connection, so the more you can make it attractive for walking and biking, the more likely that's going to happen. So anyway, one of the things that the engineering department did, city engineering department in Marquette did revise their drawings a little bit, and the streets were shrunk just a little bit. I wish we really shrunk a little bit more yet, but a little bit is better than nothing at all. But the idea is that that we have limited right-of-way width in our town, and we need to provide space for all the different users, from the bicyclists and the walkers, maybe even to dine on the edge of the street, and then public transit, and then of course trucks and cars as well. So I think one of the best things that you design for the most vulnerable first. Design from the edge of the street, and you make sure that you have an adequate sidewalk, decent tree lawn, and then you work your way in. The typical approach is you design for how much traffic you're expecting, you build them on the lanes, and then whatever residual land is left is what the pedestrians get. It's kind of backwards way of doing things. I would suggest you start from the edge and move in toward the center. Winter is can be tough, not so much this winter, but we suggest reviewing again the priority snow clearing routes. I think I read something like 18 miles of sidewalk in Marquette are being plowed publicly, and there's been a suggestion. This is a tough one, is maybe create a sidewalk snow clearing ordinance. These are really tough to pass, and they're really hard to enforce. And but if walking is important in the winter, it's something you may want to consider. You also may want to consider like snow angels, which we have employed in some other towns where I live. We have snow angels that will say, "I will clear the ramps on my block." And just today, I was walking by the bus stop, and there was a shovel that's just left at the bus stop. So whoever's standing there might just clear the bus stop, just help out, because the city can't do it all. And it's going to need some help. We want to make this town a very walkable type of town, especially in the winter months. Dave mentioned this. This is from the city engineering department. This is McClellan and US 41. Very aggressive, difficult street to cross safely. Ideally, you would civilize the street, calm it down, and make it more like a urban boulevard versus a highway speedway through your town. But that's going to take working with Michigan Department of Transportation, and I think they're warming up to some of these ideas, but they still want to move regional traffic. This is a national highway, and they want to move traffic too. So in those cases, maybe you think about putting a tunnel underneath. There's a concept for going above. There's usually some reluctance from pedestrians to go below the earth. It's kind of frightening, or they don't feel like climbing up ramps and stairs to get over. So it's not the best solution, But doing something might be better than doing nothing, which is making this a very difficult crossing. And these disconnects really hurt and makes people that live maybe south of the highway here probably grab their car keys more often because they know it's not going to be easy to walk to other parts of town. So we threw out a suggestion. I talked to MDOT. I talked to Rob Turbo, the manager in Michigan, about the idea of maybe putting a roundabout at West Washington Street and the highway. On the very far left is Holiday Inn, to give you some orientation. In order to do a T intersection, one of the two. And his response was, the intersection is working fine the way it is. There's no crashes. But I tell you, it takes a lot of land, and it's kind of a spooky, scary area. No way would you ever want to cross on foot or bike in that area. And so I think something has to be done, but it also could be a really great grand entryway into Marquette and leading to one of the most prominent, important streets, the Marquette, Washington Street, that leads into the downtown. That this could be a gateway intersection that could really stand out. And you can include some public art somewhere in that area. And a high level of design, I think, is really more to this particular intersection. Oh, I'm going back on there. Also, I suggest that we do some smaller blocks in this area to kind of extend the grid like you have in the old parts of Marquette. Gives you opportunities for all sorts of new development, opportunities for housing, for businesses. And the more streets you have, the tighter grid you have, the better the traffic will flow to Marquette. One of the things that we have is I was told when we first came here that Marquette is totally built out. There's no room to develop. And then we're confined by all the townships that, they're kind of like walls that we can't go into. But I tell you, there are all sorts of opportunities for growth in the city center. And that's really where I think growth really ought to happen anyway, because that's where you already have all your services are available. You pay a lot of money for this infrastructure, use that infrastructure efficiently. And so these parking lots, this area in purple are parking lots. And they don't generate any taxes, and they're gold mines for redevelopment in Marquette. We had a chapter on housing, and by the way, this is some of the most productive, most taxes generated per acre anywhere in the city are these condos. So when you go by, thank these people for providing a lot of taxes to provide city services. So they're pretty amazing people that are willing to cough up a lot of money, but they are generating a lot of taxes on a per acre basis. On housing, this dark green is on the side on the right is on the left is people that own homes that are burdened by trying to own a home, and that ranges anywhere from 15 to 24% of the families that own homes are really struggling to own their home. The blue on the right is people that are renting, and that ranges from 48 or 39 to 58% of people in different types of income levels that rent are really struggling to afford a place to rent in the town. So that's really an issue that has to be addressed. How are we going to address that? That's coming up here. One of the things we studied is we looked at the type of dwelling types that you have in Marquette. More than half, 1%, all the dwelling types are a single-family detached dwelling with a lot. And a lot of people love to live that way. A lot of people cannot afford to have that. All that yard to take care of and that house to buy. It's just not affordable. Housing costs have, since the 1970s, this is nationwide, from 1970s to today, using constant dollars, homes have increased almost 2.5 times as much in constant dollars, not inflated dollars. But our wages in constant dollars have increased only by 11%. So that's why we have a housing crisis in the nation. That's why we're having a housing crisis even in Marquette. So some of the things that we can do is, what about, it seems like we either build one or two things. We build detached single-family homes on fairly large lots, or we build apartment complexes. And we don't do anything in between, so we're calling that the missing middle housing. And that includes things like duplexes, triplexes, little cottage courtyards, and some bungalow courts and townhouses. Those types of things are pretty rare in Marquette. But they tend to be, they can be much more affordable than a single family home on a single lot, which is very expensive to build. So that's something that we're thinking that maybe we should allow for more of that to happen in our various zoning districts. One thing that really kind of surprised me, I mentioned this last time I spoke, is that I was really surprised that people were said that they are very supportive of this idea of having commercial neighborhood shops in the neighborhood. So they have some place to walk to. You want to build a walking environment, you also want to build things to walk to. And so having a grocery store, or maybe a dentist, maybe a lawyer, architect, whatever, some type of low-key type of shops can be very beneficial. Daycare centers, a number of different, to enrich these neighborhoods so you have places you can actually walk to, so you don't need to have an automobile. 30% of your cost of living, with housing and transportation is the automobile and transportation costs. So we can eliminate some of the big costs for living. This makes it a more affordable living, is to have commercial services nearby. So I was really surprised that Marquette seemed to be very supportive of that. Some towns are very resistant to that. They think there's too many nuisances having a corner store. Economic development, we should have a chapter on that. Checking my time, 28 minutes. There are about 4,000 people that live in Marquette and work in Marquette. But there are like 4 times more people now that leave Marquette or they are outside of Marquette and come in. So that's why we're having some traffic pulses coming into the community. Obviously, if you want to be a more sustainable community, you want to reduce your commuting. Marquette's commuting is not that long. It's compared to nationwide. It's only like a 10-minute commute. But the more we can have jobs and housing nearby, the less traffic we're going to have, less air pollution we're going to have. The healthier we might be because we might walk and bike because they're in distances that make that feasible. So it's kind of interesting just to look at the analysis of how Marquette is. We also looked at some trends, what things are growing, what areas are shrinking. And I'm thinking we're going to be spending money trying to get more businesses in town. Some of the things you might want to look at are things that are growing, the growth industries. And the copper and nickel and lead is a growth industry. And I know that Eagle Mine is looking at extending the life of that mine a little bit more. I find it kind of interesting that Office of Physicians is a growth sector for the Marquette County, but hospitals is actually a declining. I think it's declining. Yeah, hospitals are a declining industry, so that's kind of interesting. Let's get worked out. Number 4 is on the growth industry is limited service restaurants. That's basically fast foods. And Marquette has a lot of fast food restaurants. It seems like the sit-down restaurants are not as many, but both of those are full service areas. And both are growth type of industries for more, I guess, there's a possibility that could be more restaurants in Marquette. So there's quite a few fast foods, like I said, but that's a growth area. Existing land use, we studied that. And these maps were generated by the city of Marquette. So we appreciate that. They really analyzed every parcel, how the land is used. And one thing that is interesting is Marquette has a very high percent of land that is off the tax roll. Areas that are zoned for recreation, conservation, or for civic uses occupy 47% of all the land in Marquette. So the 53% of land that is producing taxes, there's a lot more strain on those properties to provide the monies that are needed for all the community services that Marquette hopes to have and expects to have. So we need to make sure that we are as efficient as possible when we do develop things. We don't squander that possibility with underdeveloping property in a way that doesn't generate much taxes. I'll go into that a little bit further. This is kind of zoomed in a little bit on a map of the central area of Marquette. I'll explain what this is. The blue areas are generating no taxes. The blue areas are generating very few taxes. The green areas, yellow and orange, are generating, and there's very little orange and yellow, they're generating a lot more taxes. It's interesting that the old east end of Marquette, the housing area, generates more taxes than like Charter Hills. So if you want to reduce more taxes, you want to start building homes on small lots, not building homes on big lots. And if you want to really generate a lot of taxes, you build a little mom and pop 2-story shop with no parking or very little parking versus a 1-story big box with a big parking lot, because they generate very little taxes for the community and they take a lot of land. I zoom a little bit closer, and I mentioned downtown produces a lot of taxes. It really shows up, but it could be doing so much more. These parking lots are really gold mines for new development that could happen over time. But we'll have to address parking in some more efficient way as we take parking lots out and put places for people to live and do businesses in downtown. This is a 3-dimensional map of where the properties are generating the taxes. The higher the bar, the more taxes are being generated. The different colors mean different zoning districts. And you can see the downtown area is generating quite a few more taxes, but it could be doing so much more than it does today. They can help to provide the services, the taxes for services and for the community. It just made better use of the land. So I think there's this. Who's looking at aerial photography, there's a lot of empty parking lots in Marquette. And they are not generating much taxes, and they have a great potential to develop and be redeveloped into productive, different types of uses. I've gone through all the background chapters now, and I'm 34 minutes, so now the last chapter is the future land use, and it's probably the chapter that's most important for the Planning Commission. But this is where we're talking about some changes that could take place, changes in land use. It comes in with some work plans for different actions you can take and different zoning amendments you might want to consider that will help to implement the plan, because we don't want to just do a plan, stick it on a shelf and forget about it. The implementation will take a whole community, planning commissioners, city commissioners, residents like you, nonprofit groups that care about the community. We're all going to have to work together to help to implement the master plan. The 3 big things I'd like to leave with you is that what we stress in the future land use plan is that we should not be afraid to mix compatible and complementary uses. So uses could be close together, so there's places where you either walk or bike to, or you have a very short drive. Parking lots can shrink that way, the streets can shrink that way, people get healthier. Obesity is a problem in Marquette. More than we can have people walking and biking, that'll have a health benefit as well. And then focus on accessibility, and I'm talking about more than just street access and getting to stores, but getting to our parks, having availability of daycare, affordable housing, to have access to cultural facilities that are affordable. These are all really important. And then also protect our resources that we cherish so much: our water quality, our air quality, our scenic lands that are in and throughout the Marquette area. So what we've done is something that is quite a bit different than your existing land use map, or existing future land use map that is much more controlled, I'm going to say, of what use can go at what place. What we've done is we've broken up the community into 11 different place types. And each place type has a sort of a function, and there's certain types of character that goes with it. And it also gives the Planning Commission some latitude to make some interpretation that a new idea like this came out about an old building, can we put that use in there? This plan is going to allow you to think intelligently about that, say, is this moving us in the direction of the plan with the guiding principles or not. And then you can make some intelligent, thoughtful decisions versus being regimented into a very tight future land use plan. That's the one, it says that that will be a office building, a residence over there because the plan says office. So this plan is saying that is celebrating again that you can mix a lot of uses that are compatible, so it's going to give a lot more flexibility. It's a different approach, so it might make some people uncomfortable in this town that we're suggesting. If you look at the recreation corridor, this is area is basically a scenic green area. We should be thoughtful of green infrastructure in this area. Buildings should be kind of small. We should preserve views. The West Marquette area, this is where I used to live, is largely residential. There's opportunities for maybe some little commercial shops and stores to be here, so you can walk to Market, maybe walk to work. And then also there's some disconnected streets here that just don't flow through that could really help to shorten trips. So you don't have to drive a mile and a half when you really, if you disconnected the street, you might only have to drive a half a mile. And so that's important that we reduce our vehicle miles traveled every day if we can. I'll move on a little bit further. Suburban South Marquette is the area south of US 41 and 28. And it's an area that also I think could really benefit by having some services, some shops in that area, especially here about some of the major streets and entries into the neighborhood here. So this area is largely that has opportunities to have some duplexes in there, just like the former one. Duplexes, maybe some accessory dwelling units. Maybe there should be some type of standards to make sure that the duplex looks like a single-family home, so it doesn't stand out. That's not too large, not too boxy, whatever. So it fits in very comfortably. I think this is one way you can introduce affordable living in these neighborhoods, and you can make this area a more walkable area as well. Downtown East Side, this is wide sidewalks. Buildings are nestled up next to the street. It's multi-story buildings. There's it's a traditional downtown. I think I've already described this area is an area that has great development potential because you have a lot of surface parking lots that could be redeveloped. You may have to build a parking deck eventually, a second one, but you might also, by making the street edges so exciting every step of the way, people tend to walk more. Disney knows that you'll walk out further if you're entertained every step of the way with a new storefront versus a dead parking lot that you're walking by. So, and it will generate so much more taxes that you can then maybe build that parking deck. Maybe you can even build bus shelters that are heated and lit at night, and you can have transit that will take some additional stress off of the parking area. So these are some ideas I think can happen, but you have to build the density if you want to make some of these things work. Transit doesn't work when you have a lot of surface parking lots. It just simply doesn't work very well. South Marquette, I think this is really a whole chimer of an area. If I was going to move back to Marquette, I think I'll look at South Marquette. The views are stunning. The character is really kind of rich. And there's an opportunity to have different types of dwelling types in this area. Some of the things that I think that are strains, a bit of stress for this area, is that it has not a really good connection to the downtown. So we put a lot of emphasis, what can we make that walking experience fun and enjoyable from South Marquette to downtown? And then you have this very attractive waterfront, but it's really hard to get across. Dave mentioned that it's really difficult to get across. So we're thinking, tame the highway as much as you can, landscape it, narrow it down if you can. Maybe a bridge going over the top of it might be something. I'll get into that a little bit later. Dead River corridors, I think this is like a playground area of Marquette. And recently I've enjoyed some of the trails and biking in this area. And this is an area we have to be very thoughtful of because of protecting the water quality. The fish in the river have a high percentage of mercury, and we don't want to lose that water quality. But there's other uses in that area besides recreation, trails. There's utilities, there's some industrial, there's some municipal services in that area too. So That's the area that's called out for the north end of Marquette. West Washington Street and the West Barrett Belt is a natural extension of the downtown. We have this beautiful downtown restaurant, West Washington Street, and then it slowly degrades into a bigger road, and parking lots become more prominent more in front. The buildings get pushed way in the back, or further back, and it really starts to lose some of the charm that you have in downtown. That could be easily extended all the way to that area that I was showing as a roundabout idea. It could be a major redevelopment area that could produce so much more in taxes, so much more in affordable housing, and also make walking, biking, and transit more feasible when you start filling all the empty gaps. I wouldn't want to walk there. I walked a little bit. It feels really uncomfortable to walk along there. I have an image to show you later on. And I already talked about the node a little bit here, but this is an opportunity to really be that gateway, that really western gateway into Marquette. Could be a really phenomenal area. Suggesting that this is a place that taller buildings might be appropriate. Instead of one-story buildings, maybe 2, 3, and 4-story buildings to really draw attention that you're coming into the city center. And then there's opportunities to make, to go out of redevelopment in that area, largely very land inefficient in that general area. And a lot of people, I think, just miss Marquette. That intersection just looks like, I'm not sure what that is. I'm not really sure where Marquette is. You can just fly right by at 55 miles per hour. Even though the speed limit may be 45. People are flying to that area. And I think we need to make kind of an announcement, a gateway feeling like, hey, this is a place to make a decision. Wonder where that beautiful street goes. And I think you'll see a lot more people coming into Marquette, supporting the town, supporting the restaurants and the businesses by having people come into town and enjoying the community. I think a lot of people just miss it. This is the campus area, University of North Marquette. Obviously, campus is the big thing. The city doesn't really have any control over the university. They're kind of on their own, but they are community partners that can work with the city and help out. And there's housing opportunities in here. I think one of the biggest things I saw is that the street system just breaks down, and it's almost like NMU is like Northern Michigan, the lake. You got to go around the lake to get around instead of going through. There's some, like K Street, is one example, could be extended, and there could be some other streets that extend it right through. It just would feel more like it's part of the community instead of an island within the community. I think by allowing for some integration of city streets to that area. Having more housing in that area, I think, would be beneficial as well, because there's obviously a lot of jobs in that area that can help to balance the job and employment area, jobs and housing. The northern part of by the Dead River Basin areas, we really see that as being reserved for industry because it has heavy rail, has a deep water port, and this is not where you want to put a dentist office. Or single-family housing, because they want to take advantage of these very expensive pieces of infrastructure. Some industry could really benefit by having rail. It can have benefit of having deep water port to ship things. I think it should be preserved in what we're calling out to be primarily industrial district. 45 minutes. Great, getting close. Forested suburban South Marquette. This is an area that is likely developed with residential, but there's opportunity for some commercial uses in this area as well. And the street network here is going to be kind of loose and curvy and everything. And I think what our goal here is, there's a lot of really beautiful recreational resources in nature that we want to protect those areas, but still allow for some development to happen here, because Marquette could really use some additional tax base in this area as well. But don't lose that forested feeling of this portion of town. So, so last year we had a workshop on redevelopment sites. We had several redevelopment sites. So I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly. I think these young Marquette residents are, those are our future leaders. They see the potential that this highway could be coming into town on South Front Street, US 41 and 28. Could be so much more than a highway blasting into town. That it's an opportunity to start to celebrate that you're coming into a town and behave differently as a driver, and to make this area much nicer. So these little flowers, tulips or whatever type of flowers are planted out here are really kind of nice, but they don't really get appreciated because people are going 45 miles per hour through here. So we really need to think about things a little differently. This aerial kind of shows, looking to the north, you can see the 5-lane highway, and you can see that MDOT made sure they got the 5 lanes in. What was left over is a sidewalk that could happen on the west side, but there's no room really for a safe sidewalk on the east side. And as Dave mentioned, there aren't any crosswalks except for one crosswalk. And getting across this, I walked across there. One guy yelled at me because I was walking at an intersection, which technically is a crosswalk that was unmarked, told me to get over the road. And I thought, well, just go back to the hotel. You know why? I can't cross. But anyway, it feels brutal. It doesn't feel enjoyable, but this could all be transformed into something much different. It is an MDOT street, so it's going to take some challenge, a little challenging to do that. But I know we have a city planner, the community development director has been pushing MDOT to be thinking about these type of things. And so, something to consider. So some of the things is maybe a sky bridge. Some people really miss the old railroad trestle downtown. I knew that was controversial. I read the articles and that was happening, taking it down, not taking it down. But actually, Dave Spencer said, hey, maybe we could build a bridge at Craig Street, a sky bridge going across the highway that would land comfortably on the waterfront without a lot of zigzags to get up and down. It'd be pretty much at grade because you have a grade difference at Craig Street to go over the highway without much ramping going up. Even on the way down, you would have to do something on the water side. But it would be a really great way to announce that you're coming into Marquette again. And maybe you can do something that reminds you of the historic trestle, a railroad trestle that used to be in downtown Marquette. We also think we should be thinking about, when we see development along here, that we preserve those views of Lake Superior. How you orient your building. Maybe it's better to have a 4-story building instead of a 2-story building that blocks the view for a 1-block long. Give them maybe a height bonus, some type of zoning benefits, but then in return, we guarantee views and broad views of Lake Superior. Something we're thinking about. Instead of 1-story buildings, we're thinking that it should be 2 stories, and get the parking away, so you can start creating a feeling that you're coming into a real community instead of just a suburban aging strip development area. Putting sidewalks on both sides, crosswalks at every intersection to remind motorists this is a walking, biking community, and you're gonna expect to see some pedestrians in this area. And then put canopy trees on both sides. That will help to enclose this really open. Anytime you have a big open wide road and the parking lots along the side of the road, the buildings are in the back, and the low slung buildings, it's going to make you want to go fast. But if you think about downtown, where the buildings have been brought up, the right of ways is many times the same width of right of way, but you will naturally slow down to a more civilized traffic speed. And I think that could happen here. I think it's going to take some work, but I think you could start off by planting canopy trees along the edges and continue to work with PennDOT and then working with the business owners and revise some of the zoning that allows for, I mean, this already happens, Dave. You can put the buildings up close but to require the parking to be to the rear or to the side of the buildings. West Washington Street, I mentioned when I started off, this is a gold mine also for redevelopment that could be a premier street that you want to have your address on. It really could be something different. You can see how it was designed when you get further to the west of downtown, that what was left over is a very rough sidewalk. The public walk breaks with the private driveways. And one of the reasons, I don't know if there's a requirement or not, but one thing you might want to do is say the public walk never breaks for a private driveway. The sidewalk goes through, and the private driveway stops for the public walk. It will send a message, a subtle message that walking is important. This type of scene says, we don't really care if you're walking out, but we're not really going to give you much. So anyway, that's a possibility of making some changes. So here's a picture, right, and this is what I was thinking, putting the buildings closer, having wide sidewalks. You have a center turn lane that could be a boulevard, and to make it easier to cross, to cool the street a little bit. This could easily be done through zoning amendments that basically have a build-to line to make sure the buildings are brought up and allow for multi-story window and allow for a great mix of rich uses that can happen. I think this street could be a phenomenal street for the community. North Lakeshore Boulevard, my thoughts on that is that what I heard from the public says, don't wreck this area. This is really important, and don't commercialize it for the tourists. This is something the locals really need to enjoy. We like the eclectic mix of uses along here, smaller scale, keep the street slow and lush with landscaping and a mix of uses would be allowed, but a little higher density housing near the downtown and then a little smaller density as you go further north. This is a picture of one of the cool stores that are in that area. And I think I've covered most of this. Codex Food Store and Odor Barrel Drive is, I think, it's a prized area for redevelopment into a mixed-use village center instead of what it is today, which is pretty much just a big parking lot that sits nearly empty, generating very little taxes from Marquette. But they only need like maybe 1/4 of the parking. So what I've done is just drawn them some lines of how you could have a street grid of new streets, and then each of those blocks would be lined with buildings, and the parking would be in the internal parts of the block. So when you're walking along those streets, you see something that's more like this, where you have maybe a civic square included, buildings close to the street, and parking would be internally on those blocks. There's just a lot of acreage there of wasted land that could really be something really special. This would be a really cool part of town. You know, downtown's really cool, some of the neighborhoods are really cool, Third Street's really cool. But this could be another place to visit that would be just really fun to be in a great place to live. Same thing with the Market Mall, same type of comments. The picture in the upper right is Nashville Commons. I made my family go to that because I'm a planner. I said, you have to see this place. It was a failed mall that has been turned into a lively mixed-use center. Check it out sometime, Nashville Commons. That could easily be a Nashville Commons 2 right here. It could really be a great village center, mix of uses, there's great shops, great living opportunities. It has great connection to the Heritage Trail, great exposure to the highway, so I think businesses want to locate there. So I'm at 56 minutes. Now we get to where the planning commission needs to go to work because we don't want the plans just sitting on the shelf. So we have a zoning plan with a lot of ideas where maybe some things, some adjustments could be made in the zoning district, which is called the land development code up here. And then we have an action plan of some of the things that you should do first, second, third, and fourth. And they might just be like instituting more green infrastructure on your roads, planting trees along, the major streets, these type of things. There's many of them, and I don't have time to go through all those. Or do you want me to go through all those? But you can read this online. You can read this. And as Dave said, this is 95% right. 5% we have made some omissions and made some errors that we need to correct. We'll do that in the next week or two. But this is to help implement some of the ideas that the community said they want to see happen. So this is one way you can do it. So, I end with this. There's the marquettemasterplan.org is how you can make comments. And I appreciate very much you listening to me today. And I just want to also thank the Planning Commission for your comments that you had to help to enhance the plan. And the steering committee, is there any steering committee members here? Raise your hand. Thank you very much, steering committee, to make sure that we engage the public. We missed an opportunity to send out a blast email for this evening's presentation. That's my mistake. We'll try to do better at the next episode of public engagement that we do have. So anyway, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, this is the time to have questions.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. It was a really great presentation. I think it's wonderful to see your love for the community. It's something that I think a lot of us feel. Since it is a planning commission meeting right now, I think maybe we'll take questions first from the planning commission before we open up for questions from everyone else. So do any of the commissioners have any questions? Comments? Suggestions? No? Okay, anyone else then from the public?
We have one person that's not shy.
What's the name of the mall that you were, the recycled mall?
Yep, that is Mashpee Commons. In Mashpee, it's right before you go out on Cape Cod, the base of the Cape Cod is where it's a real derelict mall for many years. And then turned into this lively center, including kids and skateboards, which, you know, is a problem sometimes.
Just in the future land use plan that has a category of transformative area. I mean, the other categories made sense for me intuitive, but can you explain what transformative area is?
Oh, well, okay. Maybe it's just a catchy little word that we use, but the areas that we thought that really could change significantly from what, some areas I think we, like downtown, I don't think we want to transform downtown. It's really beautiful now. We want to add something, but not transform it. In some of our historic neighborhoods and even our mid-century areas, we're not suggesting transforming them. We're talking about adding some elements and enhancing them a little bit. But like the Marquette Mall, Todex, and those corridors, we see that they need to be transformed into something significantly different. So I guess that's what we're after. I don't know if that's addressing what you were saying about.
Some of them would be like overlaid on top of, they're not an actual district. It's just-
No, yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not a district. It's just saying that we see significant changes happening in those areas. Now, what's in the zoning plan, we would suggest that maybe do a mixed-use development or a planned unit development for those areas, working with probably zoning incentives to get the property owners going, hey, this is starting to make some sense now that I can do so much more, but in return, I'm going to build this type of character instead of just a strip mall and parking.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments? Yeah,
How do you incentivize developers to build something on those valuable land when it costs the most and they can avoid paying significant increased property taxes by development while other people do develop their small businesses? How do you get them to start building out their parking lots?
Well, I think you have to show that that it is possible. For one, you need to remove regulations that might make it difficult. Some of the regulations that might be difficult would be this: that you make that developer have to go through public hearings and come to the planning commission. And a lot of developers don't want to be in city hall. They don't want to face this group right here. And they don't want to go to the city commission either. They don't want to hear from like the general public tearing apart their plans. They're frightened of that. So one of the things that is, and Marquette has really done, it's really hard to find the type of things that we could do that would enhance Marquette that Dennis and Dave are already doing. But if you can do things that are, what they would say, that are done administratively, that you work carefully with the community on developing codes that resonate well with the public. And then once you do that, then you hand it over to Dave, and then Dave will say, yeah, okay, here, I'll go through it, and you'll get your permit within a matter of days. You don't need to wait for a public hearing, you don't need to go through all that scary stuff anymore. In fact, you might be able to even apply offline and never even come to City Hall and get your permit. And so but it's important that you have standards that the community embraces first. And we need a lot of public engagement on those standards. But once those standards are set, then let staff do their work. They're the professionals that can really help out. The other thing is just the time. It takes, time means money, and when people are getting loans or they're holding costs, so if you can shorten that down. And Dave is reminding me that the process is pretty fast in Marquette already. But if you can, let's say that Todix, you can just do something, you already have a design ideas, we have standards that have been vetted through the public. Now they come in and say, hey, I think I'm ready to do a mixed use development, build a center idea. What is it gonna take me now? And Dave's like, well, we can just do that real quickly and we can check these boxes up and go ahead. So, and then sometimes there's brownfield grants and things like that to help clean contaminated properties, and other financial incentives.
I thought that, I know Kalamazoo just switched to pre-permitting system, where if they wanted to use some of the city's ideas in the buildings, they would be able to do that without the permitting process.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be something that you could pursue?
Yeah, you basically, I know Milwaukee does that as well. If you want to do a garage, you just hire an architect or engineer, and they are the design professional that will say, I certify that this is meets code, meets zoning, and they can just do it without coming to City Hall at all. Yeah, that's starting to be used, and I think that could be an effective tool as well for some projects. I don't think for huge projects you'd rather do that, but smaller projects.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chelsea Wilkinson. I'm the executive director at Room at the Inn, which is the homeless shelter that is right on West Washington Street. As we look, and I notice, of course, homelessness was on one of the very first slides. So, as you talk about community prioritizing what is mixed use, and as we look towards really making sure that there is affordable housing for every person in our community, I would just ask that as we're looking to rezone certain areas, I know that I've looked at properties as we look to expand to serve families with children experiencing homelessness, that sometimes it's hard for us to find adequate properties that we could potentially afford and we could retrofit to really service families in a unique way. And so as we look at rezoning neighborhoods, I would also ask that we include how we can use special mixed use for not only just my nonprofit, but other organizations in the area that service individuals who are vulnerable. So,
Yeah, I think allowing for more different types of housing types, dwelling types to happen, and then also maybe rethinking, looking at some of the setback requirements, yard requirements that maybe allow them to be tightened up a little bit. We all said in the multiple families, there's quite a difference, separation requirement for the 3-story apartment next to another 3-story building, a big gap that I guess the planning commission is looking at that to tighten those things up, because when you can make development more efficient, it can also lower the cost, because you don't have to buy so much land to put the same amount of dwellings in it. Good point, though. I think we need to be thinking about the people that are experiencing homelessness as part of the housing issues that we were faced with.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to read the housing section, but there's some startling statistics in there about housing and affordability. So I think your work is only even become more vital in the next 5 to 10 years as we continue to struggle with this housing issue. So, any other comments? Commissioner Lord.
Just make one comment. The ORDOC being definitely a landmark associated with Marquette. We're going to use it on the cover of the master plan. I would really like to see a paragraph between there outlining future possible uses or something, how it fits into the plan itself, rather than just the cover.
Very interesting. Yep. Thank you for your comment.
I know you talked a lot about like transit stops and that, and I know they're like a separate entity, but where do you see like Martran in the future of all of this? Because as a student and just like as a resident, they're just like not, they're not meeting like the needs of people that like want to drive everywhere.
Yeah, great comment. I think on transit and how I've heard that it's not performing very well. The ridership is quite low, hasn't bounced back after COVID like other transit centers. I think there's a really great plan that connects NMU, 3rd Street, West Washington Street to the hospital. There's a really great transit route plan that just has been, I guess, frustrating. Dave, you probably could say something about it, but it hasn't moved forward. And I think it just seems to be a great idea to connect the university to the other parts of the community. I would also suggest, in fact, I talked to a transit director. I said, what can Marquette do? And she said, one thing I would suggest is that the bus be free. Because 75% of your bus ticket is already subsidized, so we only have to come up with another 25%. What we did in Traverse City is we had businesses actually chip in. The hospital, the local college down there, some businesses that have a big employment to actually give free busing along the waterfront in Traverse City. And we actually put that in the plan that there's a possibility that I think it just makes things so much easier. You don't have to have a bus pass and figure out. It makes it more efficient. You just have free busing. It doesn't cost that much more to do that. It seems like Marquette could have that.
So just to pick up on that, we do have that plan that it's a one-page schematic of the plan that we came up with that we've talked to Marquette about. They're supportive of the plan. It's getting there with them being able to. They're still not recovered from the pandemic setbacks with drivers, with they've got funding. They've got funding. They just are still struggling. But it's something we're continuing to work on. We've been working on it for many years, and it's not an easy. It's not an easy problem to solve. They've got as an organization that receives federal funding. They move very slowly, but they're also not even fully staffed back up to where they were before the pandemic. So, but we've got board members at the city points in our plan that are advocating for our plan, but we're not the only entity in the county. They serve a very large area that includes Ishpeming, that has priority because we're looking at Madani, townships. So, getting to where our plan is going to be moving forward is what we're hoping to do sooner than later. But it's been struggling. But that plan will be in that plan sheet will be in the plan. It wasn't in this presentation.
If I could just jump in real quick, I'm like you're two board members of Marquette this group right now, and myself being one of them. From top to to listen to you, but also I know you take your time out on your tonight and what's this, but Marquette very correctly, as Dave said, this is a diverse board that represents the entire county, not just in you or like that. I think you can hear voices saying, this is what we're expecting out of transit, this is what we're looking at. That we're starting at the very beginning some formal bus planning with authority, and voices need to be heard about what our expectations are for that more. So it's like connecting up the meeting coming up with a little further stuff.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I found it interesting. Well, I guess as much as recruiting employees. Interesting with Marquette is from the young community, in contrast with I think maybe wise, that's something that sort of depth goes back to the trends of thinking. So, for example, since the 2010 stuff, since the last census, our student population said the students are increased by 16%. And that's not that now stabilized right now. So I would say that, while it's a young city, I think we can kind of look at things from the less the challenges around, energy population.
I just, to drive it home, obviously, a big proponent of transit when you talk to Sean about it, and I know that we're having a great conversation. But if we're talking about the need for higher density, especially in the downtown area, which is also needs higher density developments, all that stuff, in order to keep those tires off our streets, we gotta have that functioning. We don't need to buy tickets for where you're running the place, we should be able to swipe the card or go on, pay with an Apple Watch or all these different things that eventually we have access to. I'm not mistaken on that, but, the ideal situation isn't to sit there and say, let's put up 2 more parking lots. Let's give that walkability, that bikeability, access to public transit that's going to drive us to not have to worry about putting up, 5 layers of parking. So, I know it's not something that, it's obvious, we all know that here. If you're here for the reasons that we are, it's pretty obvious, but that's just one of those things that, you can't expect to look to double our density and not allow everybody to have one parking spot. So, stating the obvious point.
Yeah, off of that, are we looking at reducing our parking minimums for residential zoning?
Something in the plan that you mentioned that transit and existing parking is nearby that might want to think about adjacent parking. I would advocate for eliminating it altogether for residential. There's 40 communities that have eliminated parking altogether.
Minnesota just.
Yeah. Yeah, some really large communities too, and some small communities have done it. If you eliminate parking requirements, minimum parking requirements, you'll still talk about parking all the time. Developers just want to talk about parking. Where the car will sleep at night. Right. It's really more important than anything else. And sometimes planning commissions get called to how the parking lot gets decorated and landscaped, and they forget about the building design, and is probably the most important thing. So, a lot of people think that when you say no parking required, that means we're not going to allow parking to happen. This is saying that government's not going to force you to put in parking spaces. The market knows how much parking can be.
That is something we have recently discussed, and there's no parking minimums in the commercial downtown districts, but there is something we talked about expanding to other districts in the residential areas. So
Yeah.
stay tuned on that for the amendments to our land development plan. Any other questions?
I just say, speaking a little bit more about parking, I thought in the document, we talked about potentially eliminating the parking ban or having a test pilot program with certain streets in the winter being not plowed. I'd like to see more exploration of that as a possibility. Switch things on and allow certain times.
There's a couple communities that have almost as much snow as Marquette, Tosca's one, that allows you to park overnight on the street and alternate what side of the street you are on to make sure that street is plowed. So the way we did it in Park City was that we tried certain streets to allow for parking overnight, and it has worked out really well. I've not made it for all the streets yet, but I think it's a good test because public services are going to say, well, we can't really clear the street anymore. Well, the only way you really find out is park cars overnight and see if you can actually power in and see if it works. If it doesn't work, give up that idea. I think testing in real life is the best way than trying to do an analytical analysis, can it be done and what is done in other communities. Try it in Marquette and see if it works. Because You have special snow, I've been told, special snow in Marquette, so you gotta find out. Winter or not. So,
One thing that is special about Marquette is it's a college town. That complicates things quite a bit when we're talking about parking. It's not a college town like Baltimore, New York has colleges. Those don't have nearly the effect that Northern Michigan University has on the city besides Marquette. So we have a lot of students that live in town, 54,000, that unlike people that buy a house and live in a neighborhood for years, not as up on the rules. Well, as the rules as well as, I was a student there too. I mean, I'm not a student. I'm just saying it complicates enormously with parking.
Speaking of students, I wonder, and maybe this is a question, but where do we see partnerships with the university and with nonprofit and other organizations in town? Are they working, or like is the potential for that in many of these projects worked into master plan at all, or?
I never really thought much deeper than when I said that there should be a working relationship. And I guess the one thing is to have an open door policy and to trade ideas and trade resources that you have available to you to share more. It seems like the university, if you want to be a great player, you share some of the resources that the university has that's available to students, but maybe the public gets to that. But then in return, the city provides more opportunities that reduce the cost of the operating resources.
I can speak a little to that too, because tomorrow morning at 8, there's a meeting that a couple of us in the room might be going to, where they're doing some campus master planning, bringing in some consultants. And one of the really exciting things that I think would really dovetail nicely with what we just saw is the idea of a wildcat way. I don't know if anyone's heard of this idea yet, but I think it'll be really neat because it's a gesture to try to improve connectivity, like physical connectivity with the city and campus through non-motorized transportation and like a greenway. So I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work, but I think it's supposed to create like a bike lane and these kind of like non-motorized arteries through campus that might help physically connect the two things, but then also maybe create opportunities for other types of partnerships down the line. So it's a slow process because they do have their own jurisdiction, but it's a great question.
I definitely see opportunities. I'm not a student anymore, but when I was and still talking to students now, the university and its students are a source of free labor. And a lot of people from the university want to help the city and like are unable to, or like feel like they can't break in and they can't meet with the city officials. So like opening that door and making that known, you can get so much free labor from school projects. And should.
On that, for like, if people wanted to start painting their own bike lanes like right now, what process would they have to do? For their own street, be able to just like paint their shops on?
Well, some people just go and paint at night, but it's something that, but you would, like an engineering part would study it and analyze it, or Venice, I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, really, that, first and foremost, please don't go out and paint your own bike lanes like that. I mean, that puts a tremendous liability on the city if somebody uses that thinking that it's a legitimate bike lane and then there unfortunately becomes a fatality. And that's what we have to work with in this day and age, is making sure that things are marked appropriately on the pavement in accordance with the AASHTO standard. So, yeah, please don't go do that at night. Now, we are government, we do work a little bit slowly, but the backing is there in the master plan, and the plan has been there for quite some time, but it's a matter of coming up with the funding to make it happen.
It didn't really mean to go and paint at night, but some communities have actually painted at night because it was so controversial to do road diets. City of East Lansing would just because they couldn't get past, the public service just did it at night. And then the community woke up and had a narrower, different looking street.
Oh, no, we've had Mike Lyden here before for a planning effort, and you know, his whole thing is tactical urbanism. He's told people to go out and paint stuff at night
Oh,
here
really?
before, but I'm hoping everybody forgot about that.
Oh, okay.
We don't do it anymore.
So those Astros standards still don't support or make biking safe enough or make people, or have people not feel safe enough to bike. What would our steps next be? Because it currently, you know, we've put,
I think that's
you know,
I think that would be a different conversation that we would need to have outside of this meeting for me to explain it to you. I would need to consult with our city engineer.
I think, just as a general statement, there are the widths of some of the streets are pretty excessive. They could easily be painted with lines, and the street right out here, I think, having good parking and you provide a lot of parking, and some of the parking lot we have to be here where it could be really just going to be expanded because we have opportunities to park in the street that would be make better use of all that asphalt that's circulating.
And he's there, I mean, he does have, this in the bike plan to remark. There's a lot of facilities that need to be architecturally. And, you know, I would think that, I would hope that the public would trust that we have professionals that are up on to plan these facilities. If we do, I'm a transportation planner at heart before I started, and our city engineer was very keen on bikeways and trying to get this stuff done. And in ways that, you know, are doable. I mean, not all the facilities in the world are doable in Marquette. We talked about the snow. One side of the street parking, you lose 4 feet of road every winter. Well, not every winter, most winters, you lose about 4 feet of roadway, sometimes on each side of the road. But I think the average is something like 41 on each side of the road. So we've got a lot of challenges, but I think we have a lot of know-how too. And the challenge of doing things that we know how to do and things that we want to do versus things that we could do in California.
Questions, I guess, maybe Russ, you're able to stick around for a few minutes if people have any questions, want to come up and ask them. But thank you all for coming tonight, and hopefully we'll see you at a next meeting. It sounds like we're almost there, but there's a few, tweaks here and there, so hopefully we'll see you at the next meeting and continue the process. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.